Well, it's time for a brand new beginning for the 8th Doctor, as in today's Big Finish audio drama review, I'm going to be taking a look at the latest box set release, debuting the brand new companion Audacity, in a box set rather aptly titled Audacity. This release is available to order now on the Big Finish website on both physical CD and digital download, and can also be purchased as part of a bundle alongside the other box sets within this series, including Bleak Midwinter, coming out in the December of 2023. So this is one of those box sets that is really accessible to those fans who haven't listened to the recent 8th Doctor releases with the likes of Liv Chenka and Helen Sinclair, or maybe even the Time War stories. It's a brand new beginning, starting off with the Devouring as written by Lisa McMullen, and then the box set concludes with a two-part story as written by Tim Foley, entitled The Great Cyber War. Now, I did in fact marathon the entirety of this box set within the space of a day. I think it is one of those releases that is incredibly easy to listen to, and it's a rather nice comfort blanket of Doctor Who adventure, a nice blend of traditional, especially for the 8th Doctor. He's kind of returning back to his original roots, but also it's nice to have the return of a familiar face in there as well with the Cybermen. So let's delve right in with episode 1, The Devouring, introducing Lady Audacity Montague to the TARDIS, whilst also kicking off this brand new era for the 8th Doctor. For those looking for a brand new chapter within the 8th Doctor's forever expanding timeline, this is one of those. Much like the box set entitled What Lies Inside with Liv and Helen, released in November 2022, that was also a new beginning, but it still retained the companions that have been seen within the previous box sets, so I still definitely got the impression that you benefited from listening to those previous box sets, moving into What Lies Inside. This box set is completely a fresh start for the 8th Doctor, which is really nice, and it's been a while. It's lovely hearing Lisa McMullen pen a companion introductory story. Lisa has been quickly establishing herself as a regular writer at Big Finish for the past few years, and it's a joy seeing her gradually move era to era, but also ticking off those milestones like introducing new companions, writing for the Daleks, writing for the Cybermen. And of course this isn't just any companion, we finally have another historical companion for the 8th Doctor. So Audacity loves the stars. She's at home in her observatory looking at the night sky as an astronomer, and the perfect personality of course to venture into the stars with an incarnation of the Doctor. Being a historical story set in England 1812, it brings with it the struggles of women of that time period, their lack of status and power, and rather rightfully Audacity, like many women of the period, have frankly had enough. There is this wonderfully poetic description within the opening quarter of this story which instantly provides an insight into, I feel, Audacity's personality and aspirations for life, and she says something like, "I look to the heavens as the earth isn't mine," and that theme is threaded throughout this story in a really clever way as Audacity is slowly introduced to the Devouring, and I also like how those themes and those period issues are kind of pushed into the following story within this box set as well. So people in Audacity's life are quickly disappearing in front of her eyes, and it's up to Lady M and the Doctor to solve the mystery. It's a well-paced story and takes a nice amount of the time to focus its storytelling on the Doctor and Audacity and their dynamic. They are side by side throughout this episode, and this instantly gave a proper taste into this exciting duo's adventures. As Lisa McMullen describes within the behind the scenes, it's a prickly dynamic, with Audacity not impressed at all with the Doctor's Time Lordy status. Again, this theme of entitlement is kind of threaded throughout the entirety of this story, with all of the men that we encounter, these various different people in power. It's clear that Audacity has come from a rather wealthy background, she's had this arranged marriage, and it's kind of the question of education. She's pushing for others to have an education as well, including the servants within her giant house. But then this whole concept of her marriage being arranged, but at the same time, is there actually a love and affection there for the character that she's married to, but equally her pushing her career at the same time. The episode excellently showcases the type of person Audacity is. She is a force for equality, a kind and caring nature towards her staff, helping those in more vulnerable positions, encouraging education, all very good qualities, and I think that Jay Griffiths really sells this character from the off. Even within episode 1, I feel like I kind of know this personality. It's also quite the non-taxing listen. I definitely say it fits into the category of a more new series paced narrative, easy to follow. McGann, as always, is very easy to listen to. His voice is very smooth, as per usual, perfect for audio. I feel like this version of 8 is the type of Doctor who is always polished and at the height of his game, and it's incredibly frustrating kind of how together he is. I've been saying this for a while that I've wanted to hear more stories from the early era within 8th Doctor's timeline, and this is exactly why. He carries that excitement and energy for adventure, and he's not had the Time War come along and basically wear him down to absolutely nothing, and probably by this point within his timeline, he's only had his mind wiped like 100 times, so he's probably feeling quite together. So for all of these reasons, plus the really lovely cover art, I am assuming that this is relatively early on within the 8th Doctor's life. I do like the concept of the devouring, and I like how it parallels the men of 1812 seen within the story, but also still a section of men in society today. Very predatory, on the search for women, and they have that one mission in mind, to win over the woman no matter what, even if she says no. It's an interesting way of tying the sci-fi with the period, but also personally to one of the main protagonists within the story. As much as I do like the devouring as a concept, I wasn't quite keen on the voice modulation, however, that actually presented the character. I'm not a big fan of big, boomy, deep voices for monsters on audio, and especially within the audio format, there is no visual to kind of sell the foe. It's all in the voice, and I couldn't help but feel it came across as a little bit samey, just like, I'm a villain, I've got a deep voice, and I'm evil. I needed something a little bit more unique, but I think the performance definitely carried impact, and I like the way that it was an entity, and the whole concept of the devouring, the way that it's allegedly a star in space. I think that's really nice. I think that the way the episode introduces the character is really satisfying and something creative. Joseph Milson is another standout character as audacious Montague, the husband within Audacity's arranged marriage, and we have a selection of scenes with this character throughout the episode, and again this shines a light on Audacity's personal life. There is a great warmth and respect for one another, and I found their relationship believable, which I think is really impressive, especially given the amount of times Audacious is actually around. They have just enough scenes together to kind of believe this marriage is taking place, but also I like the way that he's briefly carried along within the story itself, but he's not there for the entire duration of the episode to take that attention away from Audacity. So overall for this opening story, I think it is a really strong opening episode actually. I think that The Devouring is a really nice, easy, accessible listen, perfect for new series fans as the pace and energy of a new series Doctor Who story, whilst also channeling that inner excitement of the early 8th Doctor adventures. So Tim Foley and the Cybermen, what's not to like? This box set ends with a two-parter entitled The Great Cyber War, and I was really hyped going into this story. Hearing 8 interact with the Cybermen is in fact quite a rarity, and I recently listened to the other Foley 4-part classic serial with the 5th Doctor being Pursuit of the Nightjar, and it is in fact probably one of my favourite stories, if not my favourite story, of the Big Finish releases of 2023. I loved it. Part 1 is a lovely set-up story. We are introduced to the Aurum as a space station, which is plated with gold. I wonder why. And of course the upper class are in the middle of this space station partying, and there is a celebration as Oberon Fix has come to give a speech. Meanwhile, Audacity is on her first proper trip into space, although the Doctor is instantly curious as to where they have landed. It's not a spoiler to say that this is a Cybermen story, but they aren't really present within part 1. It kind of goes down the route of, oh, I wonder who's lurking behind this plot, which evidently we all know because the name is literally in the title. And I don't really mind that because I think the tension builds quite naturally. Part 1 does a good job of setting the scene, establishing its main characters, that it can then take into episode 2. Not having the Cybermen present allows Audacity to really shine also. We hear many examples of Lady M applying her 1800s perspective to the outer stretches of space. I love her discussions with the Doctor in the early half of this story about the TARDIS, or as she refers to it, his ship, the way that it can have its occupants and the way that the TARDIS works. There is this particularly lovely line where Audacity says that she wants to learn what each lever and mechanism does within the TARDIS, which I think is a great insight into this character's thought processes, always thinking and always wanting to learn. She's basically the opposite of closed-minded. She wants to just learn and adapt to everything, which is perfect for a historical companion, which, let's face it, the vast majority of them will probably have a meltdown over absolutely everything and all of the technology. That's the thing with this episode. I think it does a very good balance of basically not making Audacity seem completely unaware of absolutely everything by having these moments she is fascinated and in awe of, say, seeing an alien landscape. It's a really lovely balance. So being in a golden-plated spaceship also allows for Audacity to continue her raging war on the rich, which is a very satisfying tie-in to episode 1. That nature to help those less well off, the closed-minded nature of those in power, all highlight how Audacity wishes to be hands-on and help everyone she meets. In particular, when she encounters the Vogons within the story and the implications that the cyber war has had on them. Very much like when I reviewed Pursuit of the Nightjar, in the kindest possible way, it's as if a child has written this Doctor Who story, a very experienced, talented child that has a way with writing and character. And I say that because scripts like this ooze with so much excitement and passion. As a listener, I enjoy it too because of that. You can hear the precision and the dedication to making each individual scene right. I think that you get the impression from Tim Foley's writing that he takes it as very much a privilege to write for Doctor Who, and he makes absolutely every episode he writes count. There is a moment where the Doctor is being questioned and he is asked to be seen by the leader of the Aurum, to which the Doctor replies, "Where do I wave?" suggesting that the leader is kind of watching over a video link or a CCTV camera, which sounds like a really minuscule moment within the story, but it is so joyfully delivered by McGann, which really brought a smile to my face. But I also think it shows lots of awareness from Tim Foley when he's writing the story, because he's physically within this environment with the characters, taking in their surroundings and what they may see. The Doctor is kind of waiting to be questioned. What will he see in this room? Well, maybe there's a CCTV camera. He's interacting with the environment, and it really does help the imagination envisage this story. It's little things like this which I think really elevate the script from something mundane and run-of-the-mill to a thoroughly enjoyable experience. Naturally, part 1 raises lots of questions. Who is Oberon Fix? How will he help overcome the Great Cyber War? Who is working for who? Where are the Cybermen? It intrigues me as to what is coming next. The story also continues to present 8 at the height of his adventurousness. Again, this cohesion to the previous story links the narratives in a really reassuring way for me as a listener. 8 has lots of charm, he's really funny, intelligent, and can deduce a lot of things that people would often overlook. Again, he is so calm, collected, he's a swishy, elegant Doctor, and I really like that. So as we move into part 2, I'm having lots of fun with this box set. The Great Cyber War Part 2 continues to build on the narrative that we've heard unfold within part 1, but this time lots more cyber combat. I do love how the Cybermen are represented within this story. Most excitingly, it's the revenge-style Cybermen, and I'm so glad to hear that Nicholas Briggs has done the very unusual, unique voice they present within that story. I've mentioned this within a number of previous Big Finish reviews, but it was one of my bugbears of the audio drama format, that the Daleks and the Cybermen have started to feel incredibly streamlined in recent years, and any deviation from the normal regular Dalek or Cybermen voices feels fresh and returning to that less polished nature of classic Doctor Who, which I really like. Again, you can really tell that Tim Foley had a lot of fun writing this one. There's lots of lovely callbacks, but the dialogue itself absolutely sells the story. It embraces the, shall we say, odd portrayal of the Cybermen within Revenge of the Cybermen, whilst also tying that into the actual story's in-universe plot, which is really clever. I did think that these voices wouldn't particularly work on audio, but they do really well. And for those of you that don't know, it basically sounds like within the actual TV story that a man is saying the words with kind of like a bucket on his head, and it sounds really echoey and weird, but it comes across really well within the audio drama format, especially the fact that these Cybermen are a little bit more emotive than others, which is very unusual. It's exciting hearing the Doctor and Audacity have their first running around corridors kind of style of story away from danger. It kind of integrates Audacity into the regular Doctor Who companion role, which is quite nice. Again, traditional but in a comforting way. It tests the dynamics compatibility, and I think it rather stands up. They have a great energy. This Doctor seems very reflective of his past memories, whilst Audacity is very open-minded. This in particular is tested when she believes that the arrival of the Cybermen will be a good thing for the Vogons, as they can help them become better, which she's kind of wrong there, isn't she? This episode does a great job of bringing the cyber war to life, and I would have liked to see the adventure maybe use this a bit more. I would certainly like to see more stories set within the actual cyber war. I think it's quite an untempered area of Doctor Who history, and I think that the sound design celebrates the rather clunky nature of this Cybermen design, with that weird whooshy gun effect as well that again we've seen within 70s Doctor Who, so it rather embraces the classic clunkiness. I do however feel like the Vogons are slightly underrepresented. Some of the support characters are Vogan, although they are much less theatrical than what was seen within Revenge of the Cybermen, and due to that fact, due to it's on audio, this sounds simply very human. So for most of the time I did actually forget that they were Vogan and not just regular humans. I think that having a little bit more time on Voga as an actual planet would have maybe placed a little bit more reality into the stakes of the adventure as well, as the story is essentially fighting to save Voga from one of the final events within the cyber war, but we don't really get to hear or see much of the planet itself. That said, being more present on Voga might have slowed down the narrative a little bit. I do like the continued fast nature of these stories, making it more accessible and an easy listen, and maybe doing more things on Voga would have made the story a bit more complex, or maybe even worse, split Audacity and the Doctor for a longer period of time, which I think at this point within the timeline, given that these characters have just met, given the fact that she is a historical companion as well, wouldn't have been a great way to take this story. As I mentioned before, this is one of those box sets that I got through within a day, which is in fact a rather irregular thing for me to do at the minute, so it's definitely a good box set. I think it's definitely a rather addictive listen and a very easy one to click play on, sit back and enjoy. Another brilliant thing that the Great Cyber War does as a story is integrate the whole concept of the Cyberman weakness to gold into the actual plot. It explores that a little bit more and sees how the Cyber War as a whole and the people working against the Cybermen are trying to use that to their advantage. And again, very much like Pursuit of the Nightjar, I love the way that Tim Foley has gone and got a little concept from Doctor Who history and decided to explore it in more detail and add an interesting narrative to that. It's kind of the core of this story in a way, and exploring the pros and cons of said weakness and if it actually has any weight to it. I think it's also interesting when you add characters the likes of Oberon Fix to the equation, because especially when you are essentially in a war with technology and advancements and cybernetics and things like that, you can imagine people like Oberon existing out there in the universe and trying to work against the Cybermen and use technology for their own advantages, however not going too far with it, as then you basically end up augmenting humans and in turn creating Cybermen. So it's an interesting way of doing kind of Doctor Who does war but in the future, and I think that the episode does a rather good job of exploring that, and I would love to see more stories surrounding the Cyber War in the future and characters like Oberon Fix working against the Cybermen. And very much like how Big Finish did mention on social media around the release of this box set, the story does end on a rather exciting note. It's not really a cliffhanger, more an advertisement for the next box set released in December 23, kind of integrated into the story. And you know what, it really works. It's in response to the events of the story. The Doctor is feeling a little bit down because of the people that have died within the episode, so this leads the Doctor to do something, and I think that it's really cool, and it kind of excites me for what's yet to come within this series. It adds an extra level to the narrative, and I think that also being able to experience this release without that end being ruined is something that I really appreciate, and hopefully Big Finish fans will be keeping it intact for as long as possible. However, I am fully expecting in the bleak midwinter to have a little bit of a cover art update at some point over the next few weeks. However, in summary, for the Great Cyber War, by far my favourite thing about this story is the use of emotive Cybermen, the way that they have this sassy voice throughout. If anything, they do have quite a number of comedic moments, which really nicely balanced out the threat of the story, the way that we're in the middle of this very big war. I like the way that cyber technology is used throughout the episode as well. It has all those little niches that make a good Cyberman story work, whilst also having the heightened pace of a new series Doctor Who story, but also not feeling run-of-the-mill. I think it has just enough original elements to feel like a fresh story, especially with Audacity being integrated into that as well, bringing her historical perspective, making it an enjoyable listen. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for regular review and commentary of the latest Big Finish audio drama releases. Have a nice day, and I shall of course see you all next time.